Throughout the day, there was a plethora of information that you recognized, things you heard, saw, felt, smelled, so on and so forth. But among all the information you processed, only a fraction of that information, allowing you to access it later. So let's take a look at how this process occurs. The way that we humans process information is much like the way a computer takes in information following a program to produce an output. First, we obtain information from the environment, which occurs in sensory memory. Now, this is where you first interact with your environment. It's a temporary register of information you get through your senses, but sight and hearing are the most compelling. Within sensory memory, you have iconic memory and echoic memory. Iconic memory is memory for what you see. Your iconic memory is demonstrated by looking at a bright screen flashed with several words. Within that flash, you will recall only some of the words, momentarily lasting only a few tenths of a second or so. Then you have your echoic memory, which is memory for what you hear. For example, when you're gazing up at the lights in psych class, your teacher suddenly calls on you to answer a question on the study guide. As you bring yourself back to the classroom from the depth of your thoughts, you'll only recover the last few words that the teacher said. Auditory echoes last for about 3 to 4 seconds. So there's a ton of information received, and we can't possibly recall all of it. We only pay attention to certain things, which gets passed along to the working memory or the short-term memory. And your working memory is limited not only in time but also in capacity. George Miller uncovered the fact that you can recall roughly 7 bits of information, give or take 2. When companies asked callers to add 3 digits to a 7-digit phone number, people were said to have forgotten, even though they had just seen it. Interesting thing is that this is why phone numbers started out being 7 digits each. Without rehearsal, we don't really retain short-term memory for long. So if you're cramming for a test, remember that it isn't at all effective because you will not be able to recall it later if required. Long-term memory is the final stage in the information processing model. Now, you might think that if you keep learning more things, you might forget the old, because you think you can't store enough information. But in reality, long-term memory storage is limitless. Our memories aren't stored away like books in a library. They're scattered and spread throughout. When psychologist Carl Lashley trained mice to navigate a maze, he took out some of their cortexes and found that they still had some memory of how to navigate no matter what part of the cortex was taken out. Learning and memory has a neural basis. Increased synapse firing after rapid stimulation strengthens neural pathway, helping to create a memory. Sometimes you have what's called a flashbulb memory. When you experience something exciting or traumatic, like a first kiss or an earthquake, you suddenly remember that event in great detail. Such as a result of emotionally triggered hormones that helps store the memory. Okay, let's go back to long-term memory. There are 2 types. There are explicit and implicit. Explicit memories occur within the conscious recall. They get processed within the hippocampus and are basically general knowledge and personal experienced events. Implicit memory occurs without conscious recall. It gets processed in other areas of the brain and includes stuff like knowing how to ride your bike, reading, and things you were classically conditioned for. And so that wraps up information processing storage.